Hello again. So, what I wanted to talk to you about now was the signs and why they're important. So, the thing you've obviously noticed by now, and this is your natal chart, obviously, is that you will have empty houses in your natal chart. And this doesn't mean that that isn't going to happen in your life, whatever the empty house may be. What it means is if you have an empty house with no planets in it, it means that that area of your life is completely up to your free will. However, what is also really important to look at, even if you do have an empty house in your chart, and in fact to look at with all of the houses in your chart, is what is the sign that rules that house for you. So as we know, as we talked about, the ascendant sign rules your first house. And then it goes onwards through the 12 houses, through the 12 signs. So even if you don't have a planet in a particular house, or multiple houses, which is completely normal, by the way, it's important to know what sign rules that house for you, because it will show you how and where that energy functions in your lifetime, and then gives you kind of a bit of an edge to how you can deal with that. So I'm going to go through all of the signs and their kind of energies and how that works as your chart ruler. So if you have your natal chart there in front of you, grab it now if you don't, and you'll see if you have your actual natal chart, you'll see all the wee symbols around the outside and wherever they match up with the houses. But if you also have the table there, which is probably easier, it will show you, it'll have a list: first house, Cancer, second house, Leo, whatever thing for you specifically. So let's go through all the energies of the different signs and how they will impact the house that they rule in your chart. We will begin, of course, with Aries, which is the start of the zodiac. So Aries is a fire sign, and it's the baby of the zodiac. So it's very much about the self, it's very much about me, it's about pioneering. The house that Aries rules is where you are walking first, where you are leading in some way. So if Aries rules your third house, even if you have no planets in your third house, if Aries rules your third house, it means that a theme of your life will be having to be the brave one in conversations, having to open up dialogue, having to maybe empower your siblings in some way. You might even be the oldest child, or having to do something first from the people around you. So it's that pioneering Aries, me first energy. The negative side of Aries energy, of course, is immaturity, is selfishness, is sometimes being quite distractible, because it's quite a childlike energy. It's an energy that hasn't got a lot of experience behind it yet. So it can also be quite temperamental. So if you have Aries as your, say, third house ruler, you could be quite argumentative for no real reason, and this causes you problems throughout your lifetime. So with all planets, all houses, all signs, I always say there's an upper and a lower way of, or higher or lower way of taking that energy. So for Aries, it is be pioneering, it's be focused, it's follow through on the passion and the power and the fire that you have. And it'll work really, really brilliantly in whatever house that rules in your life. Then we go to Gemini, which is, of course, the twins. And it talks about duality. It talks about external stimulation. It talks about the relationship between us and the outside world. And especially as people that are more intuitive and spiritual or whatever, we tend to go too far in one direction. We probably have all met like spiritual healer people that have gone completely off the deep end. But then also have experienced, empaths getting burnt out. So Gemini is where we have to find a balance, but we tend to have a bit of a seesaw, lots of coming and going, lots of busyness, lots of stimulation. Often this is really weird, but like things tend to break in whatever house Gemini rules for us. So for me, Gemini rules my second house of material things. And material things don't I don't really have a strong relationship with material things. Like, they kind of come and go, and like I don't even know how to turn on my own television. You know, I'm just like, it's not really that interesting. I use it to dry clothes. So it's that busy kind of Gemini energy. I'm always on the go anyway. It would never occur to me to sit down and watch the TV. So, and also with money, you know, money comes in, money comes out. I've had to learn to be comfortable with that push pull, because wherever Gemini rules in your chart will always be push pull, because it's learning about being comfortable with dualities or with two different options. So a lot of people can say, you know, Gemini is about being two-faced, it's about you know, being false or things like this, or being distractible. The higher road of Gemini is about not holding on too hard to something that's always in flux or always changing, but also not being silly, you know, because the twins, the Gemini, they're like kids. So if you finding a balance in between, for instance, again using say my second house, not throwing away money on gadgets, but also not clinging to the, you know, Nokia 3315 that I bought in 2001. So it's important wherever Gemini rules your chart to not be overstimulated, but also not to cling too hard to the old ways of doing things. So that's Gemini energy. It's also it's an air sign. It's the first of the air sign, so it's very intellectual. It receives information, it processes. So we're very busy and intellectual wherever Gemini is concerned. It's also somewhere that you can tend to play around with, I suppose, or you can tend to push your luck a little bit wherever Gemini rules. So if Gemini rules your third house of communication, you can probably talk your way. You got a bit of a silver tongue. You know, if Gemini rules your seventh house, you've probably had a few affairs or a few, you know, interesting relationships that have been sort of less than committed, that type of thing. It's all about the new, it's all about processing, it's all about constant flux. Taurus energy is what comes next, and Taurus is the first of the earth signs. So it's about grounding, it's about solidifying, it's about tradition, and practical results. So whatever Taurus rules is where you need to slow down and be present. And again, not get stuck, because Taurian energy can be fearful, it can be stubborn, it can be bullish, obviously. But on the higher road of Taurus rules where we are most sensual, we can slow down, we can be present. So, you know, if Taurus rules your sixth house of work, something where a job where you can be outside, you can be around animals, you can build, you can create with your own hands, you can craft, you can do hands-on healing, you know, would be really, really beneficial for you. But it's, I mean, I'm even slowing down talking about Taurus, because it's like that is really where you have to get grounded in some sense. So that's Taurian energy. It's ruled by Venus, so it's actually very, very sensual energy. It's very physical. It's where also you need to build strength. So if you're looking at fitness, you're looking at health, you're looking at fitness, look at where you have Sagittarius, look at where you have Taurus, and look at where you have Virgo. All of those will show you how you can find fitness or health programs that suit you personally. So where we are now, I have been through Aries, I have been through Gemini, I have been through Taurus. Let's talk a little bit about Cancer. And Cancerian energy is protective. It's very maternal. It shows where you tend to self-protect. It's very tidal, so this can be where you're at extremes. It's also where you're very psychic, where you're very intuitive. So say Cancer rules your seventh house. you are incredibly empathic when it comes to your relationships. But this can mean that you shut yourself off, or it can mean that you over-identify with other people, you get empathic burnout. You know, if Cancer rules your 10th house of career, you know, you might be incredibly nurturing of others, but you might shut yourself off from promotions because you're afraid of being laughed at or being turned down, or, you know, it's where you're at one extreme or the other. You can be so intuitive, so psychic, so helpful, but then also so blocked as a protection measure. So Cancer rules all those things. It rules where you need care and gentleness. So if you have Cancer ruling whatever house, that's the house you need to encourage to show itself, not to force out by the dragging by the hair. You know, it's where you've got to be gentle and reassuring, and almost where you have to remother yourself. So whatever house Cancer rules is where you have to remother yourself in some way. Leo. So Leo is the heart center. Leo, of course, is the lion. Leo is where you need to express. It can be also the lower road, where you can be a little bit overdramatic, you can be egotistical. But Leo is about where you bring glamour and beauty and truth and passion into your life, because we need those things. And especially nowadays, sometimes we tend to forget about how important it is to have things like art and music and romance and joy and playfulness in our own lives. So wherever Leo rules for you is where you need to bring those things in, where you need extra praise as a big thing as well. You know, an ignored Leo is like a drowned cat. Like you don't want to experience an ignored Leo. So being ignored or being forgotten about in whatever house Leo rules for you is like extra painful, and you can't really explain why, because it feels like a personal rejection, because anything that travels through your Leo house is coming in and out of the heart. You know, so if Leo ruled your 4th house and you didn't get invited to the family reunion, you know, that would be like shock, horror, throw me off the balcony, like how dare they, personal rejection, what have I ever done? You know, it's that kind of energy. But included, Leo energy is where you're incredibly generous. It's where you light people up with your warmth, and you're a leader. So look at your Leo house for where you can, I guess, limit any damage caused by ego or taking things personally or taking things to heart, but where you can express your own generosity. And also find ways to be you know, we all need praise sometimes. Find ways where your Leo house can be praised. You know, so if Leo rules your 6th house, you might actually suit a job where you are micromanaged, because you have someone giving you feedback 5 times a day on if you're doing a good job. You know, that might actually suit you. Then we have Virgo, and of course, as I've gone over, Virgo is the harvest goddess. It is not about the virgin at all. There's nothing prudish about Virgo. It is an earth sign after all, so it is about physical. Virgo actually rules, among other things, the skin and the lymph system and the digestive system. So skin sensitivities, or wherever you have Virgo, is where you have a need for ritual, where you have a need for perfection, analysis, processing, data, where you can also be very critical of yourself, where you need to really be discerning about what you're putting in and what you're taking out. So, you know, like I said, Virgo is the harvest. It's what you put in, you will get out. So if Virgo rules your 1st house, your 6th house particularly, you might be more prone to skin or digestive issues. If it rules your 10th house, you have to incorporate that need for routine and perfection and hands-on growth with not critiquing the bananas out of everyone else and not giving yourself burnout. So they're kind of the two sides of whatever Virgo rules in your chart. Libra is interesting because Libra is the only sign of the zodiac that isn't represented by anything living. It's just the scale. So it's like Libra is where you can be completely impartial. Libra is a bit of light relief. You know, it's an air sign. It's very social. It's charming. It's cultured. It's artistic. It can sometimes sit on the fence. It can sometimes not speak up. It can sometimes be more prone to overstepping the boundaries or being passive aggressive. So, or maybe not asserting itself enough. So wherever Libra is in your chart is where you have to find balance, where you have to bring beauty in, just like Leo, where you have to bring beauty in, but where you can charm people, where you can use your desire for justice, where you can help people find justice as well. If you have kind of a humanitarian leaning about like, I want to help everyone, but how can I help them? Look at the house that Libra rules. So if Libra rules your 4th house of home and culture, you might be more suited to helping a refugee cause. If Libra rules your 7th house, you might prefer working with domestic violence victims, that kind of thing. So your Libra house is where you can bring justice to others, where you can bring healing and harmony to others. Say Libra ruled your 11th house of friends, networks and organization. You could start a Reiki circle or a healing circle, or bring yoga into the workplace. There's a lot of really interesting ways you can bring Libra energy into your life. But the trick with any Libra energy is to physically bring it in, because it's too easy to just go, I'm naturally good at that, or I naturally enjoy that. It's like, yeah, but you can turn that into something, doesn't have to be impartial. It can be very, very effectual. Scorpio energy, of course, is the scorpion, but it also represents the eagle and the phoenix, which are the 3 levels, I suppose, of Scorpio energy. So Scorpio energy can be where you are deceptive, cunning, calculating, truth-seeking, sexual, powerful. It can also be where you're powerfully transformative, triggering, magnetic, very, very deep. So whatever house or planet Scorpio rules is where you have like mega power, but also where you're likely to trigger people. So without even maybe realizing, a lot of people, for instance, because Scorpio comes right after Libra, a lot of Librans are all very Libran and they just want to live this kind of light-filled life, but they have planets in Scorpio and they're like, Jesus, why do people react to me like so crazily? It's like they're reacting to your Scorpio planets because they detect a power that maybe you don't realize. So wherever Scorpio rules is where you have to really, really be aware of your own power, even if you don't sense it. So if Scorpio rules your 10th house, people in your career field see you as a major contender. So there's no use you playing small. You have to step up. And that's the thing with Scorpio. Wherever Scorpio rules in your chart is where you have to A, be truthful and authentic, and B, step up into your power. So if Scorpio rules your 3rd house, the way you communicate has to be powerful and truthful. If Scorpio rules your 8th house, you have incredible healing capacity as long as you don't run away from darker energies or from more complex issues. If Scorpio rules your 1st house, people will treat you like a Scorpio. People will always think you're planning something. Even if you're not planning anything, people will think that. If Scorpio rules your 7th house, you will attract Scorpio-like people. And sometimes this can be lower Scorpio people, so it's important to, like I said, be authentic and step up into your power, so that if that is what you do attract, you attract higher Scorpio energies, transformative people, healers, speakers, all that kind of thing. Sagittarius, I love Sagittarian energy. Sagittarius is of course a fire sign. It is the teacher, it is the archer, it's the adventurer. Sagittarius rules where you can be a visionary, where you can take risks, where you need space, where you need individuality, where sometimes you can go off half-cracked and everyone thinks you're insane. You can sometimes be a little bit single-minded or erratic. So, you know, if Sagittarius rules your 10th house, you might be prone to chopping and changing your career path. If Sagittarius rules your 9th house, you may have quit university 3 times before you finished, or taken up 15 different jobs, or been a Buddhist and been a Muslim and been Christian and all sorts of things. So again, Sag energy can be really, really powerful because Sag is the leader. You know, Sag is where you could be a cult leader, basically, where people will follow you, not because you're trying to empower them, but because the sheer force of your passion for whatever it is. So when you need more passion in your life, go to your Leo and go to your Sagittarius houses, and embody whatever is in them. So as long as you don't go completely selfish and disregarding other people, you know, your Sag house is where you get a lot of freedom and space and creativity. So again, like Libra, you can be creative with this house. You can express this house. Whatever one that may be that they rule. Capricorn is interesting because Capricorn is where, whatever house Capricorn rules, is where you will transform your experiences into wisdom in some way. So Sagittarius teaches by experience. So if Sagittarius rules your 10th house, you may end up mentoring people on a career level, you may end up advocating for people, that type of thing. If Capricorn rules those houses, it normally comes from your own difficulties. It's wisdom that's a spiritual wisdom that has come from practical activities, if that makes sense. So Capricorn is where you have wisdom to share. Capricorn is where you normally have to work, you have to put in effort, and overcome, you know, because it's the climbing of the mountain. But Capricorn is the mermaid. People forget this. It's not just the goat, it's the mermaid. So it's the mermaid that came from the sea with all of that deep spiritual primal wisdom and transformed just enough to carry it to the top of the mountain. So that's the power of whatever house Capricorn rules for you. That is where you can take the deepest, most emotional, spiritual understanding that you have and carry it to the top of a mountain in some way to share for other people. So again, it's a powerhouse. It talks about stepping into your power, that's where you have to be authentic and you have to have integrity. Whatever your Capricorn house is, you can't fake that one. You know, whereas like maybe Gemini or even Aries, or, you know, to be honest, a lot of the earlier signs, you can kind of make it up as you go along, or you can be creative, or you can express whatever. Capricorn houses, you have to always maintain integrity. So, you know, we always talk about Capricorns in terms of their work ethic and their career ladder and blah blah blah, but the only Capricorns that succeed on that career ladder are ones that have a really powerful reason for being there. If they don't have a reason for being there, then they're out. They're the first ones to quit, which is really interesting. I'm a Capricorn, so I understand. So yeah, think about that Capricorn energy, because a lot of people don't really understand. It's a very misunderstood sign. And it's important. Your Capricorn house is really important, especially in this lifetime, because it talks about what it is that you're transforming for other people, what legacy you're leaving behind. So if you want to talk about what legacy am I going to leave, or what kind of world can I leave to my children, I would look at where Capricorn rules in your chart. I would look at your 11th house in your chart. I would look at your MC. Those sort of areas would be talking about what you will leave behind you when you leave, or what you have to achieve in this lifetime. Then we have Aquarius, of course, and Aquarius is the humanitarian, it's the alien, it's the the gap between humans and not humans, it's the future, it's innovation. So wherever Aquarius is where you have to be futuristic, you have to be ahead of the crowd, you have to be an individual, you have to be quirky, you have to just not blend in with everyone else. So if Aquarius rules your 5th house of creativity and adventure and fun, it's like you're not going to be the sort of person that takes up, golf. You'll be the sort of person who takes up, like, cow jumping or like rocket ship building or something. It's where you have to be innovative, it's where you have to be creative. Interestingly, Aquarius actually rules astrology, and I have Aquarius on my MC, which is funny that a big part of my public career is around astrology. So yeah, wherever you have Aquarius is where you have to not be afraid to stand out from others. And because it's where you have extra insight into what's needed in the future, or the way that the world is becoming. So if Aquarius rules your 7th house, your relationship setup might be a little bit different than tradition, but it's the way that relationships for other people are heading. If it rules your 2nd house, you might develop a really interesting relationship with things, with gadgets around the home. You might work in a field that pioneers medicine, or that pioneers technological treatment or radiation therapy or research, or that kind of thing, where you're kind of one step ahead. Aquarius, whatever house Aquarius rules in your chart, is where you're kind of one step ahead. People won't really get it, and that's okay. So you have to be prepared in that house to just let your freak flag fly and just let it go. And finally we have Pisces, and Pisces is like Cancer, where you are most psychic. And what's really interesting about the Pisces energy is this is also where you can sometimes have a lack of boundaries or a lack of direction. So it's very similar to the 12th house. So wherever Pisces is in your chart is where you need very strong boundaries, where you are creative, where you're glamorous, where you have super duper intuition, where you have incredible connection to spirit, which is all beautiful, fantastic. Again, lots of artists, a lot of celebrities have strong Pisces energy in their charts, but it is also where you need boundaries. So you know what, there's probably 1,000,001 actors that have strong Pisces energies, but the ones that succeeded are the ones that went to the biggest acting schools, the ones who moved to Hollywood, the ones who turned up for every audition. So it's like, that's where you have these incredible spiritual gifts, whatever house Pisces rules, but you have to be prepared to channel that physically somehow in order for it to work. It's also the house where you can sometimes be a little bit delusional or led astray by others. So again, boundaries, because that's where you're very, very psychic. You attract people who don't use that energy well all the time. But when you do channel any of the signs properly, you attract in the higher version of that. So when you embody your Piscean energy into something creative or spiritual and you maintain boundaries, you attract divine energies, divine relationships, that kind of thing. If you really embody your Aries energy, as a leader and as someone who's willing to listen, you attract other leaders as well. If you really embody your Capricorn energy, you attract other people who have integrity, who encourage, who support. So all of the signs have two ways to go about them. So there's no bad signs, there's no negative signs. There's, again, if you do Googling, a lot of the old websites, a lot of the old ways to look at things will say this sign is in its detriment, or Mercury shouldn't be in this sign or house or whatever. Just ignore all of that really, because it is very much a very patriarchal, old-fashioned way of looking at astrology that no longer applies, because we now have power, we have technology, we can use anything to our advantage. And so one thing that I do, again, with a lot of my clients is I use a lot of my other celebrity clients, or I use celebrities in general whose charts I have as an example, so you can kind of see how that energy may or may not be manifested. You know, for example, having a moon in Capricorn was once considered to be in its detriment, but if you look at people that have a moon in Capricorn, you have Arnold Schwarzenegger, you have people that have come from nothing and built an entire empire, and then you have people like Adolf Hitler, and you're like, right, okay, so you could be either of those. You could be Mr. Universe, or you could be Hitler, and that's true for any sign and any placement at all. So there's no negative signs or placements. I do really encourage it. There's loads and loads and loads of celebrity natal charts online. I do really